Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My assignment is to, in a few minutes, tell us why we are here. We are here because yet another book has been written on our principal and former president of the country, Muhammadu Buhari. A number of books have been written on him. Like the MC said, I have written. When we were in government, some people wrote, and now my colleague in the media office of the president, Garba, Shehu, has written one. Why this rush of books? We have not even seen anything, because many, many more will come. Books should be written because human memory can be short. Therefore, a number of things need to be documented and must be documented. That is why it is needful to write books, particularly on a personality like President Buhari, who has served the country honestly and selflessly. It is said that Abraham Lincoln is the most documented American president. That as of today, there are between 15,000 and 16,000 books written on Abraham Lincoln. One president. One president. And it is good to have things like that because many generations of Americans to come will have things to read about Abraham Lincoln. Don't be surprised if in the years and the decades and epochs to come, we have many more books on President Buhari because he is like an elephant. When you touch an elephant, you account for that part of the animal you have touched. If you touch the trunk, your account is going to be different from that of the man who touched the body. And if another man touches the tail, his account will be different from that of the man who touched the body. So, many more books will come about President Buhari. He had two spokespersons, myself and Malam Garba. If you look at our books, our two books, you'll find that they are in different directions. Mine was experience working with the man. And Malam has also written in another direction. Many other books in different other directions will stick up. So we are here today to launch this book by Malam Garba Shehu, and I would like to thank everyone that is here. And I will just say, please, let's write on about a man who is iconic, about a man who is legendary, and about a man whose image looms large. Thank you very much for coming.
I must tell you something about former vice presidents and such individuals. As you know, sometimes we get it all wrong. We say that, for instance, I will be referred to as the immediate past vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. As for the person before me, who would be His Excellency Nnamdi Kanu, he would be referred to as the former Vice President of Nigeria. All those before us will be referred to as the one-time Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So I like Atiku Abubakar, who is seated here, is one time. I welcome you, sir. And also to say what a pleasure to see you, and also to know that you are healthy and well and doing so wonderfully year after year. I'm honored to welcome you all to the launch of the book, According to the President, by Malam Garba Shehu, former Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Communication. We are especially honored to have with us today General Yakubu Gowon, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who at age 90 still looks like he could still win a 100-meter dash. I'm aware, sir, that you were to go abroad before you got this invitation, but you very graciously postponed that trip to be here to celebrate with our friend and brother, Malam Garba Shehu. Garba Shehu has written a very important book, According to the President, a presidential spokesman's experience. And the book is important, not just because it details his eyewitness accounts of some of the most history-worthy moments in our national annals. And he crisscrosses two different administrations. But not just that. I think more importantly, he has been true to his heart and to his calling as a teacher. Many may not know that Malam Garba, while he was editor of the Triumph newspaper in Kano, was also doing something close to his heart, teaching journalism, aspects of journalism at his alma mater, the Bayero University. So in writing this book, he says categorically that he set out to write not an autobiography, but a textbook for those who will in the future be media advisors and practitioners in the prestigious but often difficult, sometimes treacherous terrain of politics and governance at the highest levels. By writing a textbook based on his experiences, both good and bad, he spares the wise who will follow him, the burdens of learning by experience. The popular adage, experience is the best teacher, is, as you know, only a half-truth. It is actually the shortened form of a Welsh proverb. Experience is the best teacher for a fool. The wise learn from history. History is a kinder and gentler teacher than experience. So he gives a blow-by-blow account of the inside story and several inside stories, including the conflict that developed between Vice President Abubakar Atiku and President Olusegun Obasanjo. And I'm not going to go into any of that. I'm not reviewing the book, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot to be said today about all of that. And how, what he says, how he, as a media person for Vice President Atiku, in navigating that debacle, he lost his job. And it tells the story of how one evening he got a call from NTA and was told, "We are announcing your resignation tonight." And he remonstrated that he had not resigned. The voice said, "Well, we have your letter of resignation here." And yes, his resignation was announced that evening. The job of the Vice President, and just reflecting a bit on the conflict between the Vice President and the President, I think that the only other Vice President who is here may agree with me that the job of the Vice President is possibly the most difficult in the world. It was His Excellency Umar Ganduje, former chairman of the APC, in his famous work, Deputizing, who humorously describes the conundrum that deputies face. And he once said to me, he said, when you're a deputy or vice, you're in a difficult position. And then he would pause, like a great storyteller that he is, and then say, every action you take is likely to be misinterpreted. Not necessarily by your boss, but by the numerous people around him. He says, if you humbly walk behind your boss, they will say, look at it, he's not cooperating with his boss. If you walk by his side, he'll say, ha, see this man, he thinks he's equal to the boss. And if you walk in front of him, they will say, he thinks he's better than the boss. The account of Garba Shehu about all of the events surrounding that particular conflict, I'm sure you will find incredibly interesting reading. But the bulk of the book is about his stewardship as presidential spokesman, co-presidential spokesman of President Muhammadu Buhari. And that is the bulk of the book. As we've heard, and we've already heard from his, at the time, the special advisor, spokesman to the president, Pastor Femi Adesina. They worked together very closely. And you would find in the book that his depiction of President Muhammadu Buhari and his tenure comes from a different perspective. And I must say, it sheds a completely different light on the way that he related to President Muhammadu Buhari. I'm not going to spend any time, as I said, trying to analyze that or say anything about it, only to say, as Femi Adesina has said, that President Buhari, there will be several more books written about him, several. We have read Working with Buhari. We will soon see Laughing with Buhari. And today we're seeing According to Buhari. I know that this particular occasion is one where we celebrate him and where we will also celebrate his tenure. Garba Shehu's book, I must say, is a good analysis of those times. It's a fair and objective analysis of those times. And he spares very little in terms of detail and in terms of analysis. So I welcome you all to this occasion, and I trust that you will have a very pleasant time, not just listening to experiences, but also appreciating an era of which much still will be written. Thank you very much.
President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, GCFR, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, being represented by Senator George Akume, Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Your Excellency, or His Excellency, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, being represented. His Excellency, General Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, former President in absentia, being represented by Professor Yemi Osinbajo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, executive governors here present, distinguished senators and honorable members of the House of Representatives, honorable ministers, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, former Chief of Staff to the President, the guest speaker, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Barrister Boss Mustafa, the book reviewer,
Professor Umar Pate, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, there are so many important people here, and I think I should have just said we should abide by the protocol set out and greetings set out by the Master of Ceremony and Uncle, Mr. Ebere Young. He has said it most beautifully, and I think we should abide by that. So if I have not mentioned any important person that is here, I think we should abide by the protocol of the anchor, Mr. Ebere Young. So it is indeed a great joy and pleasure for me to be here today to chair this important event, the launch of a book titled, according to the President, Lessons from a Presidential Spokesman's Experience, written by Malam Garba Shehu, OON. I'm aware that this is the second book being written on General Buhari, authored by his personal aides since he left power in 2023. The first one was working with Buhari, and we just heard from Mr. Femi Adesina, OON. This one further goes to show the loyalty, commitment, and the way Buhari's aides hold him in high esteem during and even after leaving office. When I was first approached to chair this event by the former Chief of Staff to the President, I had finalized arrangements to travel out of the country by this date. However, considering the deep respect I have for General Buhari and his aides, I couldn't but change my travel plan to accommodate this event. Further, the former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Barrister Boss Mustafa, CFR, visited me in person to deliver a copy of the book. There was no way I could have declined the invitation when the boss himself came visiting. You don't say no to the boss. In my years of service as head of state, I understood and appreciated the important role that communication plays in government and nation building. A president's actions, policies, and programs, no matter how noble or well conceived, must be clearly communicated to the citizens, to the public. This is where the role of hard-working and committed presidential spokesmen like Malam Garba Shehu is most appreciated. During his 8 years presidency, Buhari tried his best to contend with the overwhelming problems. One of such is the security situation in the country, in Nigeria. The officers and men of the Nigerian Armed Forces, and please excuse me sort of making this because I think I belong to that group. Buhari tried his best to contend with the overwhelming problems, and one of such is the security situation in Nigeria. And the officers and men of the Nigerian Armed Forces and the other security agencies must be commended for their commended for the, for their role, and be commended for their role in this respect. Recently, I went to Kaduna for this 162 Army Day celebrations, where the Chief of Army Staff, on behalf of the armed forces, reaffirmed their commitment to fight and defend the sovereignty of our nation. As Nigerians, we must wholeheartedly support our armed forces, and as they risk their lives to keep us alive, we must not allow insurgency or insecurity to threaten the corporate existence of our nation. I know General Buhari to be a staunch believer of the Nigerian project. I know him as a person not inclined to worldly or materialistic overtures. No matter the misconceptions about General Buhari, you can't take away the fact that he has the firm interest of Nigeria at heart. I also know that he will do everything to keep his integrity intact. If the truth must be told, General Buhari is a man, of austere lifestyle. I was therefore not surprised when the author of the book narrated an incident that rightly depicted the General Buhari that I know. According to Garba Shehu, shortly after being sworn in as President and Commander-in-Chief, General Buhari was informed of the need to increase the budget for catering services in the villa. He then asked what the existing budget was. When they told him it was 10 million naira for the State House, including the Vice President, guest houses and banquets in honor of visiting leaders, he screamed, "Wow," and asked that even that amount, 10 million, is too much, and it should be drastically reduced. I don't know whether the Vice President can confirm this, the ex-Vice President can confirm this. And, well, it is not in my place to make comments on the book, as that will be done by the book reviewer, Professor Pate, and the guest speaker, Barrister Mustafa Boss Mustafa, who I know is also a co-Buhari loyalist. He is better endowed to speak as guest speaker because he was part of it all. Malam Garba Shehu has been consistent in defending his master without wavering. He takes the bullet of criticisms and misconception for his boss. I know General Buhari must be proud with the crop of staff that served him with such commitment. To exude such loyalty, I believe General Buhari must have given them the freedom and support to work and defend his policies without any encumbrance. May I thank Malam Shehu also for this invaluable and compelling book, a compelling work. You did a great work in sharing with us the intricacies of what it means to be the voice of a president. Indeed, this book is a blueprint or roadmap to the present and future presidential aides on how to relate and defend the action of policies of the president, as it provides deeper understanding of the complexities of governance. It is practical guide to students and public relation practitioners on the nuances of public engagement. I therefore call on the Nigerians to get copies of this book and read it with an open mind while reflecting on the lessons it offers. At this juncture, and on a personal note, I must commend General Buhari publicly for his disposition during his tenure. He made himself very accessible to me and to all, and was always willing to listen to every advice or suggestions one may offer, one may proffer at any point in time. May I take this opportunity to salute and thank all staff that have served, all leaders, past and present, and all our civil and public servants, past and present, for their loyalty and faithful service to the nation. As I conclude, I want to once again congratulate Malam Garba Shehu on this remarkable milestone. May the contents of this book foster more effective communication in our public service and ultimately contribute to the continued progress and unity of our beloved country, Nigeria. Thank you all for coming, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That is our chairman. Can we generate an applause that sounds like...
Some of us are vertically endowed, so I have to adjust the microphone. Your Excellency, the chairman of this occasion, General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, and the Deputy Chairman, Prince Nduka, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by my senior brother and immediate successor, distinguished Senator George Akume, CON, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, ably represented by Dr. Umar Modibo, Senior Special Assistant to the President, Your Excellency, Professor Yemi Osibajo, Vice President 2015 to 2023, Alhaji Abubakar Atiku, GCON, Vice President 1999 to 2007, former governors here present, and the Deputy Governor of Katsina, Honorable Ministers serving and former Secretary to the Government, Ambassador Babaganaki Inwe, GCON, Chief of Staff to President Buhari, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, CFR, Honorable Speaker of Jigawa State House of Assembly, the book reviewer, our chief lunchers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The theme of this lecture, which I have been asked to deliver, President Muhammadu Buhari's contribution to national development, is both a reflection on leadership and an exploration of the institutions, policies, and principles that defined his presidency. While we are gathered to present Garba Shehu's According to the President, this lecture does not adopt that book's title, but rather complements it by situating the administration's advancement agenda within the broader architecture of governance and reform. Let me begin with a moment that shaped the trajectory of the 2015 Buhari presidential campaign. In the lead up to the 2015 general elections, a small but consequential meeting was held to discuss key appointments into the emerging structure of the Buhari presidential campaign. It was at that meeting that Garba Shehu's name was tabled as a prospective Director of Media and Publicity. And I'm glad that Mala Nasru El-Rufai is here in this meeting. He was part of that decision making. And I humbly made that suggestion. And that suggestion gave birth to the appointment of Mala Garba Shehu as the Director of Media and Publicity. The decision was based on merit. He brought a long-established reputation in political communication, editorial leadership, and public engagement. More importantly, he was considered as someone who could speak with clarity while remaining anchored in institutional discipline. From that moment, Mr. Shehu became an integral part of the political infrastructure that eventually shaped the Buhari administration. His transition from campaign spokesperson to presidential media advisor was a logical progression, a signal continuity of message and fidelity to the original orientation of the presidency. And arguably, President Buhari's public life was marked not just by official positions, but by a strong connection with many Nigerians. His reputation for integrity, as attested to by General Gowon, who was his boss, discipline, and national commitment earned him lasting support, especially in the northern parts of the country and later the south, and gave him that nickname of Say My Gaskiya. This support was built on earned social trust rather than political expediency, and it gave his administration the room to pursue difficult reforms in areas like security and the economy with a degree of public backing that was unusual in Nigerian political history. This lecture has been structured into three major parts: the introduction, with which I'm dealing with now, a reflection of evolutionary and exemplary leadership, and President Buhari's legacy 2015 to 2023, and the concluding part of the lecture. Let me start with the first segment. This lecture on President Buhari's contribution to national development reflects a lifetime of committed public service. His career has been shaped by national duty, from his early military service to his tenure as military governor of the northeastern state and thereafter Borno state. A lot of the Gen Zs don't even know that Buhari served as governor of Borno state, but he served for a very short while, where he carried out foundational reforms during the post-Civil War recovery, and later as Federal Commissioner for Petroleum and Natural Resources between 1976 and 1978. Under his supervision, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, initiated key pipeline and depot infrastructure and approved contracts for the Kaduna and Warri refineries, laying the foundation for Nigeria's downstream oil sector. As executive chairman of the Petroleum Special Trust Fund, he oversaw one of Nigeria's most impactful delivery-focused programs, directing resources towards roads, education, primary health care, and essential medicine during a time of physical constraint. These roles reinforced his belief in infrastructure-led growth and disciplined public service. His service as Nigeria's head of state and decades after as democratically elected president provided continuity to his earlier reformist instincts. In his dual role as president and minister of petroleum resources, he supervised major energy sector reforms, culminating in the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021. He also advanced gas infrastructure through flagship projects such as the Ajakuta-Kaduna-Kano pipeline and the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline under his decade of gas strategy. Beyond formal office, he chaired the board of trustees of the Katsina State Development Foundation, Gidauniyan Jihar Katsina, for nearly 2 decades, focusing on grassroots advancement and empowerment. These sectoral contributions in energy, infrastructure, health, and education reflect a consistent commitment to Nigerians' advancement priorities, provide context for understanding the values and the logic that later shaped his presidency. Before turning to that presidency, it is important to recognize the former president's role in reshaping Nigeria's political trajectory. In early 2013, as the leader of the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, President Buhari formally requested and supported the creation of the CPC Merger Committee, part of a broader coalition building process that brought together the ACN, the party under which I served as the Deputy National Chairman on Transition or Merger Committee, the AMPP, and a faction of the APGA, and the elements of the ruling party through the breakaway PDP group. His endorsement and participation, along with other party leaders, such as the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Senator Ali Modu Sharif, who was the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the AMPP, lent credence and credibility and direction to the merger, helping to unify disparate parties' factions under the banner of the All Progressive Congress. That coalition building paved the way for the first democratic defeat of an incumbent ruling party in Nigeria's history. President Buhari's integrity, national stature, and disciplined messaging were central to that breakthrough. Not only that, for us in the ACN, I do not intend to stir any controversy, but I will make bold to state this, that the merger in 2013 was midwife to present a Buhari or create a Buhari presidency. Because we looked at the statistics of the votes that were coming to the table. In the 2003 election against Obasanjo, Buhari raked in 2.7 million votes. In the 2007 election with Shehu 2012, the 12.7 million votes. In 2007, after the PDP unleashed its machinery, it came to 6.6 million votes against Yar'Adua. In 2011, it went back to 12.2 million votes. And when we were conceptualizing the merger, we said, what will give us a head start? And obviously, it was in the back of our consciousness that a merger with the CPC, though the CPC at that time had only one state, the ACN had 6 states, the AMPP had 3 states. But when you sum out the total votes that gave us the presidency in 2015, the aggregate of the total votes were 15.4 million votes. So basically, what we brought to the table, the other parties that were in the merger, in addition to Buhari's 12.2 million votes, were 3.2 million votes. I do not intend to stir any controversy, but I am saying that that was the most realistic and pragmatic thing that we needed to do. I was the Deputy National Chairman of the ACN then. So I anchored the transition. My colleagues in the ACN are here. FIME is here. What we did and the decisions that we took was to provide or to produce a Buhari presidency. Buhari formally requested, his endorsement assisted in that. No account of Buhari's President Buhari's tenure would be complete without acknowledging the extended periods he spent on medical leave. These moments were politically delicate, were also telling of his leadership philosophy and personality. Rather than disrupt governance like we saw in the previous administration, he allowed the constitutional order to function as intended, delegating authority to the vice president and demonstrating a rare commitment to institutional stability. While some perceived as a slowing of momentum, these periods revealed his preference for rule-based delegation and his continued confidence in the systems his administration had built. It was leadership by structure. As Secretary to the Government of the Federation, I had the responsibility of coordinating the machinery of government under his leadership. The role offered direct exposure to the administration's internal logic, interministerial coordination and institutional reforms. Today's lecture, therefore, is not a catalogue of achievements. It is a reflection on how the Buhari administration approached governance, its reform logic, institutional priorities, and long-term intent. No single lecture can exhaustively unpack the complexity of those years. Rather, this presentation offers a considered overview of key interventions and the thinking behind them. The period in view was one of recalibration, characterized by policy consistency and a deliberate effort to rebuild state capacity, outcomes that merit rigorous policy and historic scrutiny. The aim here is to situate the administration within the larger arc of Nigeria's developmental journey, focusing on what was done, how it was done, and why it matters. President Buhari's legacies, May 2015 to May 2023. When President Buhari assumed office in May 2015, Nigeria was facing acute macroeconomic and security challenges. Crude oil prices had collapsed, revenues had declined sharply, and public institutions struggled with credibility. Boko Haram insurgency had escalated in the northeast, testing federal unity. The administration responded by prioritizing fiscal discipline, capital spending, and institutional reforms to restore stability and rebuild trust. The Strategic Implementation Plan, SIP, served as a short-term stabilization tool, followed by the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, 2017 to 2020, which laid out a strategy for infrastructure, industrialization, and public sector reform. The ERGP boosted investor confidence with clear policy targets. In 2021, the administration launched the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy, aiming to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty within 10 years. Chaired by the Vice President and supported by governors and ministers and the private sector, the NPRGS adopted a multi-pronged strategy, including microeconomic stability, industrialization, redistributive programs, and public service reform. Ladies and gentlemen, the administration's second term in 2019 marked a shift to evidence-led governance. It established the Policy Programs and Projects Audit Committee to review first-term outcomes and set new priorities, culminating in the 9 priority areas launched in August 2019. This covered microeconomy, stability, food security, energy, infrastructure, industrialization, human capital, social inclusion, governance, and security. These priorities informed the medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 and Nigeria Agenda 2050, which introduced long-range planning anchored in demographics, sectoral linkages, and performance benchmarks. Both frameworks emerged from wide consultation across government and partners. There are numerous projects that were undertaken by the Buhari administration. I won't want to bore you with them, but suffices to mention strategic prioritization of transformative legacy projects, such as the Second Niger Bridge, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Highway, and the Warri-Itakpe rail line, each improving mobility, logistics, and regional connectivity. Several of these projects are still ongoing. Hundreds of kilometers were covered by road infrastructure, and I believe that the current government is doing its best to ensure that these roads become functional and usable for the communities. Ladies and gentlemen, one other area in which Buhari's leadership came to the forefront was in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, which posed one of Nigeria's most complex governance challenges. Under President Buhari, the response was guided by science, fiscal intervention, and coordination. And that earned him the nomenclature of the ECOWAS champion on COVID-19. He worked with regional leaders on border protocols, preparedness, and equitable vaccine access. His steady diplomacy positioned Nigeria as a regional anchor during a time of great uncertainty. The Presidential Task Force, which I chaired, provided high-level oversight, eliminating bureaucratic delays, ensuring federal and subnational alignment, testing infrastructure expanded swiftly with over 200 labs activated. The NCDC led on surveillance and diagnostics, supported by real-time data and public health communication that maintained citizen trust. I can say with every degree of certainty that in the course of the over 1 year that I chaired the national response on COVID-19, we had unfettered access to President Buhari. We had political support that we needed. I remember one of the days when I went and briefed him, and I told him that I was shutting down the country. He gazed at me strangely, as if, where did you get that power from? I said, it's delegated authority, sir. When you appointed me as
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my highest honor to stand before you to speak about why I wrote this book. But this enormous get-together, gathering of people, no, it's not owed to me, it's owed to Muhammadu Buhari. Can I beg that each one of us, depending on their religions, say a 10-second prayer. May Allah restore President Muhammadu Buhari's health. 10 seconds, please. Thank you. May the God Almighty accept. I'm not going to go, to recognitions, but by necessity, there are a few that I just have to make. And please forgive me if I have to take a little more time. Your Excellency General Yakubu Gowon, the chairman of this occasion, who, as he said, actually deferred his summer holiday. He had gone on holiday from about June and doesn't come back until shortly before his birthday every year in October. Here he is with us. We're deeply honored by this. General, they mentioned Burial College, and I'm privileged to have attended Burial College as you did. Because for us, you are the personification of all that is good, of the values that Burial College represented. When I was in junior class, you visited as the commander-in-chief, as head of state. Something happened, I don't know why. I found myself in a picture in between you and Governor Rotimi, who accompanied you to Burial College on that day. After you had left, the pictures were put on display in front of the dining hall. Before I got to the dining hall to eat my food, everyone who saw me was screaming, "Come and see, you are in the same picture with General Gowon. You are in the same picture with General." So it's amazing, this life, that I'm seated under the same roof. This mighty gentleman, taller than a windmill. It's a privilege. It's also a privilege that number one citizen of the country, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is here adequately represented. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for me, people can say whatever they want to say. As Buhari's agent, I had been sent a number of times to Bola Ahmed Tinubu to find explanations, to find support for some of our communication issues. Because then, and I believe up to today, President Tinubu has this country's biggest media assets, and he has never failed to come to our aid. So, and it is not by coincidence that he chose Senator George Akume to represent him. And by the way, I hope that the former governor of Benue, when he reads the book, he will not sue me. I hope you will like the picture of him that I have with that book. But Senator Akume was, if you will recall, actually I was one of the campaign managers. His campaign managers when he wanted to be Senate President in 2015. And I also want to say, I want to skip His Excellency Vice President Atiku Abubakar, because I'll come back to him. His Excellency Vice President Oshibanjo, intellectual powerhouse. And by coincidence, he has an equally intelligent wife, Her Excellency Dolap. And I used to think that if Professor Oshibanjo wasn't a professor of law. He wasn't into the calling of religion. He and his wife would have been fantastic nuclear engineers. And they would have given this country a very early time, a very early nuclear bomb. Would have passed that stage a long time ago. But he led us and we learned so much from him. And I want to say something that I think that is being skipped in the order of protocol. His Excellency Baba Gana Kingibe is also a Vice President of Nigeria. By the virtue of the recognition by President Muhammadu Buhari of the June 12 election as having produced a president for Nigeria and a vice president. So both himself and Chief Atiku Abubakar are deserving of all the honor that is due to former presidents and vice presidents. Let me go to the book. Why did I write it? And again, I hope I'm not going to be accused of taking from Professor Oshibajo's calling. Muslims are encouraged to read widely. The Lord God in the Bible wanted to send someone. In Bible, Isaiah 6:8, he said, "Whom shall I send?" And the journalist stepped forward and said, "Here I am, send me." Not knowing what lied ahead. Some of us who chose journalism as profession, we didn't know that it was a bed with bombs beneath it. This is illustrated by one small story that I will tell. A gentleman and his wife took their 7-year-old child to a shop. As they were going around, mother saw 2 sweaters which she liked for this 7-year-old. Apparently there was no money to pay for this. So, noticing that she was not being looked at, she picked 2 and tucked them in her bag. Her husband saw her, but shopkeeper didn't see. So they went home. Mommy was in the kitchen preparing food. And so the father looked at this little child and said to him, "Your mother is a thief." So the little boy got so enraged and dashed into the kitchen and was shouting at mother, "You are a thief. Why did you steal sweaters? I will not use them. You must take them back." So she took the sweaters from home and went out, back to the shop, or maybe she just dumped them somewhere else and came back. In growing up to his adulthood, this little boy said he hated his father, not his mother, for telling him that his mother was a thief. As journalists, we get into a lot of trouble, not because it's our own issue, but because we speak for some others. And that's why I'm coming to His Excellency former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. Because this story, and I hope he will like also the part that I'm going to say about him in the book, the disclosures that I have made, because he served in a government that wanted to destroy his political future, wanted to destroy his family, wanted to destroy his business. And because at some point they couldn't reach him, it was those of us, the lesser beings, who were serving him that were being hounded. A mention was made about my sack on television. What followed was even bigger. Frequent arrests, detention, DSS cells. and eventually even being dumped in Kuje prison. And I wish Justice Gumi was here, the one who discharged and acquitted me. So one of the lessons we want journalists to take from this experience is journalism is enormous in terms of the power that you yield, deciding which story to use, which story not to use. You can destroy people, you can build them. This book, many years back, Justice Gumi he got into trouble. He was the chief judge of Abuja, FCT High Court, and there was a big fight against him. And they got him, they almost got him, those people who are trying to chase him out. And some of my friends said, there's a gentleman who's a good judge, and they want to destroy him, help him. And I'm glad that Bayo Onanuga is seated here. His magazine, The News, did a cover story. I got Bayo to understand what was happening, and they ran a cover story on Justice Gumi and how he defended his own position. When all of these things were going on, I had forgotten completely. I was being hounded, I was prosecuted, and before Justice Gumi, he was trying me. Gumi could have jailed me. I don't know. I'm not saying that he compromised justice, because the merit of my case was defended adequately. Three SANs in Gige, Akintola, Ricky Tarfa, they were all sponsored by the former vice president. The goodness of my case was not in doubt. But as a human being, had I refused to help Justice Gumi, had I joined others to antagonize him, and at the end of it, in fact, Justice Gumi sent a gift to me. And I said, no, not for me. This is the tradition we carried from Bariwa College, of which you are also a product. I will not take any gift. You can make the small boys over there who helped you. And that was it. So I'm saying that we're trying to bring learning to young people so that they can take the examples from, and it is not even inside the government. You had situations where you feel you are in the same political party, the same government, you are sailing in the same direction, and then somebody who should know gives you misleading information. As a journalist, we are taught to not to lower your guard, check and cross-check everything that they give you. But this man is a senior person in your government. You are working with them. What did he stand to gain by misleading you? So these things, and for the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, we have with him for 8 years old. I hope we are able to bring him much closer to Nigeria so that they will understand him. Including, as the vice president said, the things that he eats, the clothes that he wears. Why would he reject a diamond wristwatch? All of these things, people will learn, from them. And to talk about, and the book also addressing a lot of the things that Boss Mustafa has said that were authoritatively collected and presented in a very summary form. So Muhammadu Buhari has done his part, and the legacy must be preserved. This is a country that forgets too often. We are bedeviled by amnesia. The moment you go, they forget about you and they move on. So we must continue to preserve the legacy and keep the records of our former leaders. I think I will not say much. I'm supposed to introduce. So the book is intended to achieve two major objectives. It's a learning document for younger people who are learning journalism and public relations in schools, and two, to project the legacies of President Muhammadu Buhari. Before I take my seat, I know that I will not be back to say my vote of thanks. I'd like to thank everyone who has come here, and in particular, cite the two younger brothers of Mrs. Buhari who also have not been recognized, Mahmoud and Ahmed. And Lord Garba actually was my roommate and classmate in Barewa College. And I'm happy that he's good. They said he brought a bullion bag here. I'm glad that I had this. And Femi Adesina also, I must mention him because he's just a special kind of person. You know, and Governor Fahimi is in this room. When they first appointed us, and it's in the book, he called us to his suite in Hilton and said, "You two, you must not fight." I said, "Me and Femi, we won't fight." He kept on wanting to, how would you work as spokespersons, two of you, and you don't fight? But in the end, here we are. It's like, you know, two men sharing one wife, and they don't quarrel about it. that's how we ended it. And please also, Nduka Obaibena is my boss in the media. He's done everything for me, and I really appreciate his generosity. And lastly, my wife, Hafsatu, she's seated there. Before we were going through those hassles, arrest and detention, we used to hear about high blood pressure from our neighbors. It came to our house that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Garba Shehu, for putting your experience.
Diplomats to a gathering and expect him not to do some protocols. So Chairman of the occasion, His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, the Deputy Chairman, Prince Nduka Obiaguna, the Duke himself, His Excellency President Ahmed Bola TINUBU, GCFR, ably represented by distinguished Senator George Akumi, Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The Vice President of the Federal Republic, Senator Shetima Kashim, ably represented by Professor Umar Modibo. His Excellency, the former Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, GCON, representing our boss, President Muhammadu Buhari. On a personal note, I owe President Buhari a huge debt of gratitude, and of course through him to the nation, for taking a chance to appoint me as his foreign minister in 1984. Then 39 years old, and he took a chance. But even a bigger chance, 35 years later, when he asked me, after we were involuntarily out of government in 1985, in the year 2020, appointed me as his chief of staff to quote him, to come and help him conduct the transition, but also to come and suffer with him in serving Nigeria. His Excellency, former President, former Vice President, not one time, but former Vice President, with due respect to Professor Sibaji, my friend Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, GCON. You can choose your brothers. You cannot choose your brothers, but you can choose your friend. I'm happy to call him my friend. The former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babagana Kingi, with GCON. And I want to personally welcome him to the enviable rank of Nigerians in this hall who are 80 years and above. Yeah, congratulations for reaching 80 years. And you know that it will not be complete if I don't make the reference to the fact that I'm your elder brother, you know. By a few weeks, but nonetheless, it's permanent. The members of the National Assembly here present, former governors, representatives of state governors, former ministers, including especially the ministers under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration from 2015 to 2023. His Royal Highness, the 16th Emir of Kano, Alhaji Aminu Bayero, the chairman of the NDLA, General Buba Marwa, who again I was privileged to have had as my defense advisor during the time I was privileged to be ambassador and permanent representative of Nigeria to the UN. I don't want to praise myself, but I think since he left, he became governor, became ambassador, and is now one of the most active chairman of NDLA that the country has ever seen. Please give me a round of applause. The keynote speaker, the boss of bosses, Boss Mustafa, and the book reviewer, Professor Patti. As an academician also, I have huge respect for vice chancellors, because although I've been privileged and still am to serve as chancellor of some universities, pro-chancellors, I've never had the privilege of becoming a vice chancellor. I respect you and thank you for that wonderful review. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I was wondering what is the role of a chief presenter, because I'm not a book reviewer, I'm not a chief launcher, but because I came about a few thousands of miles away to be here today, and the author of the book felt they have to create some role for the former boss as the chief of staff, because we worked together in the villa under President Muhammadu Buhari. He said, okay, you be the chief presenter. And that's a very tricky one, because you have the author of the book who told us why he wrote the book. Then we had the keynote speaker and the chief reviewer as to what is in the book. Okay, and then you have the chief launchers who will soon open their wallets. So I guess I'm in between. And so please forgive me if sometimes what I'm about to say may overlap somewhat with those that have been said a bit before. But what a great honor, a unique privilege for me as the chief presenter of this book to pay tribute to the author for giving us an enduring chronicle of public service and strategic communication from the vantage point of a presidential spokesman. In a real sense, therefore, this is far more than a mere book launch. It is a profound act of national documentation, a deliberate and vital effort to imbue our collective consciousness with the intricate operational dynamics of presidential communication and a vital element in the very architecture of democratic governance. Mr. President, who is ably represented by His Excellency, distinguished Senator George Akume, your esteemed presence here today transcends a simple gesture of goodwill. We see it as a potent affirmation of our administration's unwavering commitment to international discourse, intellectual discourse, and an unequivocal recognition of the weight that strategic communication carries between the government and the people in shaping effective democratic leadership through national conversation as a critical block in nation building. This 260-page book, meticulously crafted and easy to read book, breaks free from the conventional parameters of political memoirs. It emerges instead as a critical academic and practical resource, especially designed to guide students of communication, journalists, practitioners, and researchers through the complex terrain of presidential communications. It offers an authoritative, first-hand account of the strategic decisions and daily operational realities that define two pivotal epochs in Nigeria's recent political history. Madam Shehu's chronicle navigates with considerable candor a 6-month tenure as spokesman for His Excellency, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar GCON during the concluding phase of the Obasanjo administration. This period, which he described in his own words as testy yet remarkable for his professional growth, saw him embroiled in intense political contention, facing challenges that included multiple arrests, detention by DSS, and even incarceration in Kuje prison for 2 arduous years. These rough and tough moments are also presented as vital lessons for media practitioners and politicians alike on navigating the intricate relationship with the media, with the society, the courts, law enforcement agencies also. His personal odyssey, commencing from ostensibly modest circumstance, as he himself put it, the son of a driver who struggled to support the family in Dutse and in Kanu, without privilege and no connections, yet rising to Nigeria's seat of power, serves as a powerful validation of meritocracy within our democratic framework. His life, as he puts it, again I quote, exemplifies the story of success without the limits set by social factors like ethnicity, religion, or region. The larger, more extensive portion of this volume, however, documents Madam Shehu's transformative 8-year journey along our revered former President Muhammadu Buhari from the pivotal 2015 presidential campaign onwards. It also offers an intimate portrayal of President Buhari's unique persona and style of governance, and his unwavering conviction in allowing his work to speak for him rather than merely engaging in ceremonial ostentation. Former Vice President Osinbajo also mentioned about the humorous side of President Buhari. And we're still waiting for that book, Laughing with Buhari, because I want to share with this audience some of my own experiences. In January 1984, just about a month after President Buhari took office as head of the federal military government, we had a special envoy from President Reagan to tell us, to give us a very stern message. Why did we close the border, which impacted negatively to Niger, by then whose leader was Hosni Abri, a favorite son, a favorite friend and ally of the United States. So this gentleman came, was a retired general, and he wanted to start with some small talk, like diplomats tend to do. And he said, Mr. President, I love your country. As a matter of fact, the first time I visited Nigeria was in 1942, when, as a junior officer in the U.S. Army during World War II, I came to visit Nigeria. So General Buhari said, General, I didn't realize until you mentioned this that we had more than one thing in common. I know we are both retired generals, but also that, as you now say, we both visited Nigeria for the first time in 1942. And he looked at me and he said, my foreign minister had not even visited by the fact that both of us visited Nigeria. But this book illuminates key policy thrusts that underscore President Buhari's transformative legacy. I will skip them because but Mustafa has promised us there will be a compendium which will be shared. But it's important to put these things on record. It was Winston Churchill, at the end of World War II, the Prime Minister of Britain, who was asked, Prime Minister, how do you think, or do you think that history will be kind to you? And he said, yes, history will be kind to me because I intend to write it. And he wrote 11 volumes, those of you remember, on the history of Second World War. So we're not going to have 11 volumes about Buhari's administration, but we might get close to it. But I know that whether we write it or not, history will be kind to that administration, because he was a unique man, a unique leader, led by example, not ostentatious, very stern. And he always, once you give somebody a responsibility, he allows you to do your job. But of course, unfortunately, some people in whom he places confidence abuse it. I'm not going to go into detail, but they know themselves. Yeah, they abuse it. But nonetheless, he's a man that will take responsibility. And he says, even in private to me, to say, well, I appointed them. Okay, and sometimes I have to be tolerant of some inefficiencies, some backroom deals, but ultimately it's my name. But I feel sure that in totality, we will get to appreciate the man. But the particularly insightful contribution of this volume lies in his rigorous analysis of the greatest challenge that President Buhari faced, which Madam Shehu identified as, quote, the perception challenge and the tyranny of high expectation. And this perception challenge is not small. President Buhari himself often reminds, when I'm with him, that, you know, this is your America. He refers to them as my America, because I've spent an enormous amount of time in the US as a student, teacher, and worker. He said, can you imagine that I was invited by President Trump at that time, head of state of Nigeria, invited by the president. We sat down in front of the camera. He said, Mr. President, why are you killing Christians in your country? Well, because the perception from the Christian right that was given to him was that this was an Islamic fundamentalist who is bent on just killing Christians in his country. So, perception challenge and the tyranny of high expectations, which is that Buhari has come, he must solve all problems, both domestic and foreign. And I must say that this is also something that we have to reflect on as Nigerians. We always think that we have a president who should resolve all problems. But he can't. Every president leads, sets example, has to be accountable, but the responsibility or the guarantee of success belongs not just to the president, but to those who assist him, those who are sometimes imposed on him, and the rest of the people. That's why security, with due respect to General Burta is here and all the other generals, national security is not the responsibility of the president and commander-in-chief alone. I think it was the famous General Colin Powell who said, or it's Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, he said, you don't fight a war with the army you wish. You fight a war with the army that you have. So in many ways, a country deserves the kind of president they get because it's a reflection of the country. However, there are times when the country gets a president that is better than what they deserve, or sometimes worse. And the process of selecting the president, I'm using this podium and this book to me, we must look into political parties in Nigeria, how presidential candidates, gubernatorial candidates are selected, by whom, and in what process, begin. Because if garbage in, garbage out. But people feel, well, it's not our business, we are not politicians. I'm not a politician myself, student political science. But the country's business is our business, collective business. Security is our collective business. But yes, we hold the leader responsible has to take responsibility as the leader. And no leader is there that he doesn't want. Because if you don't want, you can always leave. So by accepting, then that's affect your responsibility for people to put their lives in your hands And I believe to the best of his ability, Buhari did his best with what he had. Now, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. A particularly insightful contribution of this volume lies in the fact that we didn't have at the beginning what we call strategic communication or strategic approach in addressing criticism in the right spirit and often concrete communication solution for dealing with scenarios. Many people think that being a spokesman is just to abuse everybody or tit for tat. It's not it. It's communication to get the president's policies understood and, if possible, accepted by the generality of the people. That's the role. And therefore, you have to take a strategic approach to it. Duke, I'm not speaking for you. You know, I'm just a simple man from Ilori. But that's what strategic communication is about, not abusing, you know. Because how can you be abusing people? And, you know, you will explain what you are trying to do, what are the constraints, and what efforts you are making, and therefore how the president deserves the support which he needs. So, this dimension of strategic communication offers invaluable lessons for every public servant and aspiring leader on navigating the complexities of public opinion in a vibrant democracy, particularly in an era contending with misinformation and the inherent risk of spinning stories. Yeah. And also, I sympathize because Garba, Shehu, Femi Adesina, they are the spokesmen, but they are the designated spokesmen. There are so many people who speak for the president. But Mustafa speaks for the president. Gambari sometimes speaks for the president. You know, chairman of the party speaks for the president. Sometimes traditional rulers speak for the president. Some unofficial advisors, these mysterious people that never come to the public front, you know, but Nigerians know them and go to them. They speak for the president. So how do you, the designated spokesman, coordinate all of this in serving the president? But beyond the rich narrative of the two presidencies that Madam Garba Shehu served, the book serves as an invaluable pedagogical instrument for practitioners. It delves into the crucial importance of record keeping, the cultivation of robust interpersonal relationship, and explicates the immense ethical power wielded by journalists in their decisions to print or not to print. It highlights the advent of strategic communication in the villa and offers a comprehensive blueprint for ethical leadership development, inspiring the future generation to serve with distinction. I feel sure, therefore, Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that this book will undoubtedly serve as a critical reference for future administrations striving for enhanced accountability and efficiency. So, there are many reasons to commend this book. There are many reasons why you should buy this book. There are many reasons why you should read this book. But what seems to me one of the best reasons is that the author is committed to mentorship. You know, mentorship. Yeah. There was a time in this country where the leaders mentored people. Abubakar Tafawa Balewa mentored Shehu Shagari and others. Ahmadu Bello mentored several people. You know, I'm also a beneficiary of the kind of mentoring that Ahmadu Bello did by suggesting that there are young northerners that should be sent to King's College. Why is it? It's a federal government secondary school, the only federal government boys secondary school. No northerners there. Go there. You know, grow there. Go there and grow there. Send people like Baba Gana Kingbe and influence. They have been sent to UK as undergraduates, Sussex. I don't know why I went to Sussex, by the way, when there was the London School of Economics, there were Oxford and Cambridge. But that's a story for another time. But you see, they groomed people, they mentored people, and where we are today. So where are who have people mentored that followed those great leaders of our country? So this gentleman, Garba.
While we have one room, let's settle down, please. Thank you.
For Baba Ghana, CFR,
for boss. Special advisors, members of the diplomatic corps, traditional rulers, retired generals, retired police officers. The author of this wonderful book, Garba Shehu, I recall our fight against theft, and what you told me. And of course, we also escaped COVID-19 very narrowly. The chief launchers ably represented Inua, and my very good friend, I can't see him now, invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I am representing Mr. President, who would have loved to be here because of his respect for the former President, Muhammadu Buhari. But as you all know, he is in faraway Brazil on official assignment. He asked me to represent him, so please let me proceed with his address. I am deeply honored to be here today as the special guest of honor at the formal presentation of this thought-provoking and important book, according to the President, Lessons from a Presidential Spokesman's Experience, authored by a seasoned journalist, media strategist, and former presidential spokesman, Madam Garba. Let me begin by congratulating the author for this important contribution to Nigeria's democratic literature and public discourse. This event is not merely a celebration of a book. It is a significant national moment, an opportunity to reflect on the leadership journey my predecessor and one of Nigeria's most consequential leaders, former President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, whose time in office shaped the direction of our country in profound ways. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the book we are gathered to launch today is a compelling and sincere documentation of leadership from within. Through the eyes and experiences of a spokesman who worked at the very heart of power, we are offered a unique, unfiltered, and well-considered insight into the decisions, challenges, and accomplishments that defined President Buhari's tenure from 2015 to 2023. From President Muhammadu Buhari, former President Muhammadu Buhari is a man whose leadership stood on the pillars of integrity, accountability, prudence, as well as patriotism. Under his stewardship, Nigeria witnessed a decisive push to confront insecurity, a serious commitment to infrastructure renewal, a renewed focus on self-reliance, and a clear effort to sanitize the public sector. These themes resonate strongly in this book and must be appreciated in their full historic dimensions. From the restoration of fiscal discipline to the diversification of the economy, from the development of our critical national infrastructure to the transformation of our rail and road networks, and from the expansion of social investment programs to the repositioning of the agricultural sector, President Buhari's era reflected an earnest attempt to reposition Nigeria to future resilience. In foreign policy, he was deliberate, calculated, and consistent. Nigeria's voice remained steady and respected within the African Union and the international community. Our engagement with global partners were guided by a principled foreign policy doctrine that upheld national interest, regional stability, and non-alignment. At this juncture, it is also worth commending President Buhari's humility and restraint in the exercise of presidential power, hallmarks of democratic maturity. In the face of provocation, he remained calm. In moments of uncertainty, he held steady. His was a presidency of discipline and quiet strength. Malam Garba Shehu's account provides a critical behind-the-scenes perspective. The book also serves as a repository of wisdom for public communicators, policymakers, scholars, historians, and Nigerians at large. It offers key lessons on leadership communication, governance under pressure, and intersection between power and public perception. As a nation, we must never get tired of documenting our journey. If we must move forward purposefully, we must learn from the past with honesty. Books like this play a vital role in that learning process. They preserve memory, illuminate truth, and sharpen our collective understanding of nationhood. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, nation building is a relay. The efforts of one administration lay the foundation for the next. In this regard, I acknowledge the efforts of my predecessor, President Buhari, and assure all Nigerians that the reform-oriented path he initiated will be considered consolidated and strengthened under this administration. Our renewed hope agenda is inspired by the desire to build a resilient, just, and inclusive Nigeria, a nation that delivers dividends of democracy to all its citizens. Let me once again commend Malam Garba Shehu, whose mentor happens to be the vice chairman of this occasion, the Duke, who happens to be my in-law. So, let me once again commend Malam Garba Shehu for this work of deep insight and historical relevance. I congratulate the organizing committee of this book's public presentation and all those who supported its production. As we unveil this book, may it serve as a mirror to the past, a compass for the present, and a beacon for the future. Let us continue to invest in honest storytelling, objective assessments, and constructive national dialogue. I thank you all for your kind attention. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thanking His Excellency, the President of Nigeria. We thank you. I'm very sure the pledge forms have gone round. Before we commence the actual launch of the book, we'll have very short goodwill messages, not more than 2 minutes per person before we go. And to kick us off, I'd like to welcome
the Federation, Your Excellency, the Vice President ably represented, our father, the former Head of State, General Yakubu Gowon, Your Excellency, the former Vice President, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the Vice President, Professor Osinbajo in absentia, other distinguished guests, too numerous to mention, but I have high regards for all of them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It is with great honor and gratitude to Allah that we stand before you today as we gather to celebrate the launch of an extraordinary book, according to the President. Lessons from a presidential spokesman experience, authored by none other than one of the greatest Nigerian journalists of our generation, Madam Garba Shehu. This book not only serves as evidence to his journalistic prowess, but also provides invaluable insights into the leadership and legacy of our former president, one of the fathers of our great nation, President Muhammadu Buhari. Today, we pay tribute to a leader whose commitment to the continuous existence of our nation has left an indelible mark on the hearts of millions of Nigerians. President Buhari exemplified integrity, resilience, and a steadfast dedication to the principles of democracy and good governance. His tenure was not without challenges, yet he handles them with a great sense of purpose and unflinching resolve to uplift the Nigerian people. We would like to commend Madam Garba Shehu for his remarkable efforts in documenting these vital lessons learned during his tenure or his time as a presidential spokesperson. His dedication to truth and transparency in journalism has made him one of Nigeria's finest media personalities. Garba's ability to capture the essence of leadership and the intricacies of governance in this book will undoubtedly serve as a guiding light for future generations of leaders and citizens alike. We will also like to take a moment to acknowledge the courage and loyalty of Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the former Chief of Staff of President Buhari, who happens to be my uncle. His presence here today alongside other former ministers who have gathered to honor their principal speaks volume about the bonds forged in service of our nation. It is an indication to the spirit of brotherhood and mutual respect that exists among those who have dedicated their lives to the betterment of our nation. As we reflect on the legacy of President Buhari, let us not forget the wisdom he imparted during his tenure. We pray for his good health and long life so that Nigeria can continue to benefit from his fountain of wisdom, experience, and patriotism. May he remain a guiding force in our nation's journey towards greatness. At this juncture, we wish to seize this opportunity of this moment to call upon our esteemed leaders to redouble their efforts in alleviating the sufferings of the common man. It is imperative that we continue to prioritize the urgent resolution of the security challenges and communal violence that have plagued our beloved nation. Let us remember that the strength of our country lies not just in our leadership, but in the collective spirit of brotherhood among the citizens. In the same vein, we wish to call upon all Nigerians to rally behind our government, offering support and, most importantly, fervent prayers for our leaders. Together, let us forge a path towards lasting peace, genuine unity, and everlasting prosperity, ensuring that every voice is heard and every life valued. Let us join our hands in prayers for the continuous peace and stability of our beloved nation. It is only through unity, peace, understanding, and a shared commitment to our common goals that we can achieve the greatness that lies ahead. I will emphasize our commitment to the government in prayers and goodwill, praying Allah will continue to guide and bless us. Allah ya ci gaba da kare mutuncinmu da addininmu. Allah ya ba mu lafiya da zaman lafiya. Iyayenmu da malamanmu da shugabanninmu da suka koma ga Ubangiji, Allah ya jaddada musu rahama. Allah ya ci gaba da ba mu albarkacinsu. Idan wa'adin mu yayi, Allah ya sa mu cika da imani. Wassalamu alaikum.